Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's good to see everybody, and I'm glad that Capone is here because I have a surprise for everybody. I have a very special guest with me today. So I hope that you're ready for this surprise. It's Sidhu. It's Sidhu. It's my baby boy. Hey, baby. As you can see, Sidhu is alive and well. All of the rumors and speculation about, I'll turn the camera back on since everybody was so happy to see him. Hey, Sidhu. Hi, my baby. Hi, sweetie. What a good boy. Look at his frosty face, my sweet old man. He's going to be 11 years old next May. And he's happy and healthy, and he's been having a great time running around. So all those rumors that I had given him up to a shelter, or that I had abandoned him, or God forbid, euthanized him, absolutely false, 100% false. He's my darling. I had to go to the Washington area on Sunday on personal business. Who the fuck said that, Silvile? Oh, you know, the usual suspects. Among them, Texas one, saying that I was a bad pet owner because I dumped my dog. No, I did not. Hey, Amber, isn't he though? Thanks for being a member for a month. I appreciate that. So I took Bug with me on the trip. Hi, everybody. And I know, right, absurdity? I know, it's always good. Come here, Sidhu. Come here, baby boy. Come here. Come here, my darling. I'm going to show him again because I can't believe that he's really here. Yeah, my baby. Look at how good he looks. He's lost weight. He's as frisky as a pup. And he is still getting used to having so much space to run around in. So much room. Okay, I've got to mute for a second. I'll Sorry about that. Hey, come here. I know, I cannot stop showing this beautiful boy. Sidhu. God damn it, why am I? This beautiful boy. Sidhu. My baby. My baby. So, he's such a good boy. He's been having such a good time. All right. So, let's talk about what happened. I'm not going to play any of the ridiculous, idiotic spurging that has been going on social media because, quite frankly, it's exactly what I would have expected. And these are not serious people. You know, on my drive back from DC, I made the huge mistake of listening to Keemstar and the ridiculous, idiotic commentary, I mean, which is what one would expect, was absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd. So one of the things that Keemstar was saying was, oh my God, I'm hearing that there's all kinds of stuff going on in Philadelphia, and this is going to be a problem, and it's going to throw Pennsylvania, and there's cheating. It's like, okay, and then Pennsylvania went red, so I'm sure that everybody's going to get right on those Philly investigations, right? I saw one guy on Twitter who appears to have completely lost his goddamn mind, saying, well, do we get our January 6th now? No, for what? For what? This is democracy, you idiot. No, there shouldn't have been a January 6th to begin with. The opponent conceded. There is not a hint of irregularities. Nothing. Not a whisper of it. So what, you want to go storm the Capitol and do what exactly? What exactly is it that you think would be a reasonable response to a candidate losing an election in a fair and free vote? So I've been giving this a lot of thought because even though I have been saying, and those of you who have been with me for a while, whether on Rumble or on YouTube, know that I have been saying for months that this was going to be a landslide. I knew it in my bones. I knew that this was going to be decisive. Of course, I had no way of knowing it was going to be this decisive. A clear winner with a vast majority of electoral votes and winning the popular vote, which is extraordinary. It is a huge, huge victory. Now, we can argue whether this was a vote against Harris or this was a vote for Trump. I think it's a bit of both. It doesn't matter. One person won and the other person lost. The question is, how is it that I had a sneaking suspicion that this was going to be a landslide victory? Well, it started a while ago. Actually, I began picking up signals when Dylan Mulvaney went to the White House as an honored guest of Joe Biden. And I remember watching that and thinking, this is so unbelievably tone deaf. I am absolutely startled. I am startled that somebody at the White House thought that this would be a good idea. It played very, very badly, and we all know about the Bud Light boycott. And how anybody thought that this was going to play well is shocking to me. I don't know who made that decision at the White House. I don't know how this was vetted. I don't know how the senior people at the White House thought that this was going to work. But that really got under people's skin. It got under people's skin big time. And I think that part of the problem, and listen, I'm a Washingtonian, I'm a Washington native, I know how the town thinks. I know how political consultants think. And it was obvious that what they were doing was they were trying to angle for the youth vote, the TikTok vote. Well, good luck with that. okay? Because your core demographic, the people who actually show up to vote, are not necessarily the TikTok generation. But they made an attempt. It failed. It was a huge problem. All right. That was the beginning. And then you guys might think I'm crazy. You might think that I'm drawing conclusions based on random evidence, like some wacko QAnon person. But I swear there's a point to this. When I saw what was happening with last summer's Hollywood releases and how all of the movies were flopping one after the, hi Cheryl, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And the reason was that the studios were dismissing the complaints and the concerns from the core fan bases of each and every movie or each and every universe, whether it was Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Marvel, or DC. And it was obvious that these movies had been cobbled together by the DEI experts who then turned around and decided, okay, well, we're going to do these movies. We're going to redo the plot lines. We're going to add these random characters and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, even given the fact that movies have about a 2-year arc from the proposal to the final, release of the movie. So 2 years prior, I don't think that anybody in Hollywood could have imagined that the zeitgeist was going to change so quickly. And it did. And they were caught off guard. But the reaction to the complaints from the fans was very indicative of the problem. And this is exactly what we've been seeing in the country. That instead of saying, look, we heard you, we understand, you're absolutely right, we shouldn't have fiddled with these very beloved properties. All of you are invested in these stories, and we're going to do better. We're going to stick to the original spirit, let's say, of these stories. No, what they did was they sent the directors out. They sent other people out to criticize the fan base and call them racist, call them sexist, call them bigoted. Stop me if this starts to sound familiar. And I thought, wow, there is a huge disconnect. And we are no longer in 2020, 2021, or 2022. Those days are over. Absolutely over. And now what we're seeing is people rising up and saying, God damn it, you are not going to call me a fucking racist just because I think that your Star Wars TV show sucked. You are not going to call me sexist because I don't want these female characters. You are not going to call me names because I'm not signing off on the garbage pop culture that you're feeding us. We saw what happened with Snow White, which had to be delayed for a year because of the big mouth on Rachel Zegler. And just as an aside, I am absolutely astonished that the studios don't put a stronger lock on the movie stars that are going out to promote these movies. She went out there, she ran her mouth, it was a whole thing, and it was a problem. And it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem in the next year. So I could already see that the zeitgeist had changed and that people were no longer willing to have a reasonable critique responded to with insults and ad homs, and have the public then decide to put out a movie, or have the public go out and spend their hard-earned money on properties, on movies that they didn't want to see. So this is like the pop culture element. A lot has changed over the past year. A lot of things have changed. There has been, like I said, a massive, massive shift in American culture. A massive shift. It seems like people finally got tired of pronouns. People got tired of being gaslighted. People got tired of watching men beating up women at the Olympics and getting gold medals. People got tired of seeing big hulking men getting on women's sports teams and cheating their way to world records or anything like that. They got tired of teachers in school being crazy and trying to shove propaganda down the throats of children. And they got really tired of states passing laws where you can get your child removed from your home if you don't allow them to transition. And this is happening in conservative states, by the way. They got tired of seeing stories about sorority sisters not wanting a weirdo male rushing the sorority and then having a court tell them, oh, well, you have to take this person in. This person is female. This person is a woman. They got sick of it. And I think that there was like a collective decision that the country has gone fucking crazy. The country has gone insane. And the way to respond to people who come up with valid criticisms or valid concerns is not to turn around, call them names, try to get them canceled, or God forbid in the UK, get them arrested for misgendering someone or saying that a man cannot become a woman. It is absolutely terrifying. People were gaslighted in the cities too. We've seen a lot of videos, especially coming from Black residents of these cities, who are saying, wait a second, so you mean to tell me that I have worked all my life and I'm struggling, between gas prices and food prices and the rents and everything else, and you're going to have people crossing the border illegally coming in and getting money, housing, opportunities? What? Are you kidding? Are you kidding? And it's been building and building and building. And I want to address the issue of the Latino vote, which swung very, very strongly for Trump this time around. It's very interesting to me that I see people who are out there who are flabbergasted at why it is that Latinos turned out so strongly for Trump. Thank you, Zarfax. Yeah, I will. I'm getting to that. Thank you, Zarfax. I appreciate the super chat. It's always good to see you. Thank you. My theory is that the people who are baffled by this Latino turnout these are people who have never met an actual Latino in their lives. These are people who have never spoken. First of all, they think that all Latinos are the same. They think that all Latinos speak Spanish the same way. They think all Latinos speak Spanish full stop, okay, which is not true. They think that all Latinos have brown skin, maybe black skin sometimes, but they are absolutely convinced that Latinos vote based on identity politics. And when they see people coming across the border illegally, that they're like, oh yeah, by all means, there's my brother from Venezuela, there's my brother from Peru, from Colombia, Mexico, whatever, and that they are going to say, wonderful, here, give them as much money as possible. No. If you are a citizen of the United States and you have gone through all the grief and the suffering and the nightmare of going through the immigration process, from the paperwork to the fees, to the waiting and the waiting and the waiting, the last thing that you are going to support is anybody who jumps the line. And I do want to say this about all immigrant groups. There has been a rumor for years, or like a trope, that, the ones who get in and the ones who get their citizenship or get their green card are the first ones to slam the door on the way out. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's not what this is about. Only people who have gone through the process understand what a nightmare it is and how incredibly unfair it is for anyone to jump the line. and get all these additional benefits and goodies and treats on top of it. Latinos have been asking for years, stop calling us Latinx. Stop it. That is not a word. Spanish is a gendered language. It's Latino or Latina. Latinx is a term, it is a word that is only used by the wokerati, usually in academia or, these idiot streamers or tweeters or whatever online. It is not a term that Latinos like. As a matter of fact, Latinx is considered to be an insult. Latinos tend to be insulted when they are referred to as Latinx. So, yeah, exactly. And I too get that annoyed reaction when I see that word, because it is not a word. It is an attempt to erase gender from the Spanish language, and it is absolutely absurd. Now, I see that for the most part, no, it is not Spanish. It's not. And attempting to remove gender from a Romance language, whether it's French, Portuguese, Romansh, whatever, is something that really, really pisses people off. Stop messing with our language. Stop messing with our terms. Stop doing it. And they wouldn't stop. And they tried to convince us that, well, this is the way it is and you're going to have to accept it. No. We don't want your pronouns. We don't care about your pronouns. We don't want kids being medicated. We don't want kids being operated on. We don't want weirdos online communicating with our kids privately in Discord servers or anywhere else or in DMs or tweets or whatever. We don't want that. And those of us who raised objections were called every type of phobe and bigot and everything else. And at a certain point, once you've been called a racist one time too many, or once you have been singled out for insults, for cancellation, whatever, because people don't like what you say, you don't tend to miss it. You're very, very aware of it, and it pisses you off. It pisses you off. And gradually, this feeling started to build and build and build and build. And the anger built and built and built. Why do you think that he made inroads with the black community? Why do you think he made such huge inroads with Jews, with women? There was this theory floating around that, women are going to be so angry about abortion, they're all going to show up and they are going to vote against whomever. Well, a reminder that this happened under the Biden administration. Another reminder that some of us warned voters, if you are going to go to the polls and you are going to pull fuck shit by voting for Bernie Sanders or Jill Stein or whatever, the courts are going to be open season. There are a lot of ancient Supreme Court justices, and the next president is going to get a chance to replace them. So, nobody listened. Nobody listened, and look at what happened. Feminists dropped the ball. Women dropped the ball. Everybody dropped the ball. What women are concerned about now is what is being taught to the kids in school. They're concerned about high cost of living. They're concerned about their kids' futures. That is what they're concerned about. And by the way, people are also fed the fuck up, absolutely fed the fuck up with these constant, nonstop protests that have been going on in the streets for over a year. They're fed up. They can't take it anymore. Absolutely cannot take it anymore. They don't understand why it is that people who block the streets don't go to jail. They don't understand why it is that a bunch of Antifa people taking over a building at a university and basically holding a janitor hostage do not get convicted. They don't understand a lot of things. They don't get it. They do not get it. So, there is a perception in the country that some people are allowed to get away with everything and that other people get screwed. I had a friend in New York who spent like 6 days in Rikers because of a traffic ticket that he hadn't paid off. He had absolutely no idea. He got picked up. He was in fucking Rikers. Rikers. And you look at these people who are marching in the streets, creating a commotion, creating problems. And what do you end up with? You end up with my friend with a traffic violation in Rikers. So gradually, this all builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And people look at Kamala Harris on The View, and she's asked, is there anything that happened during the Biden administration that you would change? And she says no. And people look at her and say, wait a second, lady. Wait a second. Have you been listening to food, or have you been looking at food prices? Have you been looking at the cost of living? Have you seen how home prices are out of control? Have you seen any of this? Have you seen any of it? Have you seen all these people pouring across the border? Are you kidding? No. That's a problem. Now, I see that the left is like all agitated because the Cheneys, apparently Liz Cheney endorsed Kamala Harris. The only people who are talking about that are hard left bloggers, or not bloggers, but streamers and people on YouTube and Twitch and so on. Nobody else cares. As a matter of fact, when I found out that Liz Cheney endorsed Kamala Harris, I had no idea. I had not a fucking clue in the world. Not a clue. Nobody cares. People care about whether she could run the country. Now, of course, I've seen Cenk, or however you pronounce his name, and Hassan and Kyle Kalinske and people like that saying, well, no, her problem was that she ran too conservative. You know, she should have been more progressive. I guess that they missed the memo that, that these progressive candidates, 2 of them were voted out during the primary stage. Cori Bush in Missouri and Jamal Bowman in New York. Nobody wants progressive policies. Nobody. Maybe if you live in Portland or San Francisco, you're cool with it, but nobody else wants it. I can tell you, as somebody who lived in DC and has moved to Indiana, and someone who spent a lot of time, my mouth is dry, sorry, driving back and forth between DC and Indiana and having conversations with people, nobody wants it. Nobody. People want fairness. They want fairness. People don't want to be called names just because they have a difference of opinion with someone else. People don't want to be canceled because they're too afraid to speak up, to speak their mind and say what's actually on their mind and be able to have a civil conversation. And it is not a coincidence that Gen X turned out so strongly for Trump. It's not, because we're the generation that asked, please, leave us alone. Leave us alone. We're the generation that grew up with pop culture, like we grew up with George Carlin, we grew up with Chris Rock, we grew up with Eddie Murphy. We want edgy comedy. We want to be able to joke about everything. We want to be able to speak our minds. And apparently the tide went against us. And a lot of us got screwed over by that. A lot of us did. And we were angry. Now, and also Gen X is the generation that currently has kids that are going, thank you, Anna. Thank you, my love. The kids that are currently in college or late high school, and they're seeing the bullshit. They're seeing the bullshit, and they don't like it. They don't want to pay $80,000 or $90,000 a year to a university only to have the campus shut down because lunatics from Antifa have taken over. They don't want classes canceled because Trump won and everybody has to, suck their thumbs and wrap themselves in a blanket. We are not producing a generation of adults. They are being coddled by these universities, coddled. And as a matter of fact, one of the interesting things, this story with the squirrel and the raccoon in New York. Why did that story gain so much traction? Why? Why did the story gain so much traction? It wasn't just because the squirrel was cute and wore a little hat and all that. It wasn't just that. It was also that it was a classic example of government overreach, of some nosy neighbor calling in a complaint about two creatures that were no trouble to anyone, weren't a threat to anyone, weren't a problem for anyone. And having them come in, having animal control come in and euthanize two sweet creatures when there is an exploding rat problem in New York City that is not being seen to, that is not being handled properly. And people got mad. That's why that story had legs. That's why so many people were talking about it. And it was another example of people saying, enough, enough. What is this? Yeah, exactly. Government overreach. People just got fed up. And they see that Kamala Harris was part of that problem. She was a big part of that problem. You cannot be the vice president of an administration and then claim that you couldn't do anything, or even worse, claim that there were no mistakes that happened during that administration. You cannot make that claim. You can't do it. I wanted to touch briefly on the issue of the vice presidential pick. I am still waiting to hear how it was that she chose Walz as her running mate. There were some really, really strong candidates or strong potentials on the list. I'm glad that she didn't choose Shapiro because you know who would have gotten blamed for the loss. We all know. We don't have to say it. Senator Kelly of Arizona has an amazing backstory. He was a Top Gun in the Navy. He was an astronaut. He commanded the last space shuttle mission. His wife, Gabby Giffords, was a congresswoman who was shot in the head at point-blank range by a deranged stalker who showed up at a campaign event at a Safeway and tried to kill her. This is an amazing backstory. Absolutely amazing backstory. And Arizona was a critical state. She could have picked him. She didn't. She could have picked Andy Beshear. Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky. He's young. He is an attractive candidate. His approval rating is 67% in Kentucky as a Democrat. He is the second most popular governor in the country. And she didn't pick him. She went with a guy from Minnesota who is far, far, far to the left of anything that anyone, that normal, I use the word normal, sarcastically, but you know what I'm saying. Average people look at him and the role that he played during the BLM riots and the policies that he has pushed or signed off on in Minnesota, and they look at him and they say, absolutely not. He can't even remember his own military record. He is the worst vice presidential pick I have seen since Sarah Palin. And I am guessing that he was similarly unvetted when he was chosen. I am baffled. I mean, this is not just a tiny little mistake. This is a huge, huge error, a self-inflicted error that she chose to go with. I don't understand it. I will never understand it. Listening to political consultants on panels on CNN, MSNBC, and so on are absolutely, it's like being in cloud cuckoo land. These people do not inhabit the same reality that I do. I can tell you that. It used to be that political consultants had experience running campaigns all over the country. I am wondering whether these so-called political consultants ever leave the Beltway, because they don't seem to understand how the country works. They cannot read the tea leaves. They cannot relate to people outside of the Beltway. They can't do it. And then, or outside of New York City or wherever they happen to be based. Now, I understand that after a campaign falters miserably, you get these guys out there and they're doing postmortems and they're trying to spin it the best way they can. There is no positive spin to this loss. This is a loss of a magnitude that is absolutely startling. Startling. And I see that already. What has happened? Well, I've seen a torrent of abuse and bigotry unleashed on Latinos on Twitter. Again, people who think that all people from a certain ethnic group vote as a block because of the color of their skin, because of the language that they speak, because of their backgrounds, because they're from the same country. I mean, it's ridiculous. Or they're the same religion. It is completely and totally ludicrous. It is ludicrous. It doesn't work that way. Owen Jones posted a tweet. He's such an idiot. But for those of you who don't know, Owen Jones is a columnist for The Guardian. And he was in New York City and he got a cab ride with a Pakistani Muslim who said that he was going to go vote for Trump. And Jones was absolutely flabbergasted as to why that was. And he asked him why, and he said, because of the economy. The economy is really bad. It's really, really bad for working stiffs. A note, not everybody has a stock market account. Not everybody has a trust fund. Not everybody has access to that kind of money. And people are struggling all over the country, everywhere. And the Democrats were completely tone deaf to these issues. Tone deaf. They were tone deaf to the problems that the open border is creating. Tone deaf to people who said, stop these protests in the streets, stop blocking traffic, stop all this, stop the abuse, stop the insanity. They were tone deaf to all of it because they were trying to reach out to the progressive coalition of the party, which is the cancer inside the party that has destroyed the Democratic Party. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib should not be influential in the party in any way, shape, or form. Their ideas are deeply unpopular. Perhaps they're popular within their own districts, but outside of those districts, they are deeply, deeply, deeply unpopular. So, and I'm seeing these hilarious tweets about how, he's going to deport all the Latinos. How the fuck do you deport an American citizen? You can't deport American citizens. It doesn't work like that. And the implication that all Latinos are here illegally is so unbelievably ignorant and racist. It's just incredible to me. No. If he wants to deport the illegals, then that is what needs to happen. Oh, Ilhan Omar, thank you, Zarfax. I knew I was forgetting one of them. I knew that one of them slipped my mind. What do I think of Tulsi Gabbard? I do not like Tulsi Gabbard. I think that she is she was obviously working as a stooge for Bashar al-Assad at one point. And I don't think that she's that bright. I mean, she's really toned down a lot of her rhetoric, which is good. But I really am concerned that she could have gone to Syria and then come out thinking that Bashar al-Assad was clean as a whistle and that other people were responsible for the massive numbers of deaths, hundreds of thousands of people that he killed in his own country with chemical weapons. It's startling to me. Startling to me. So again, we could see this building and building and building and building. And so the only thing that surprised me about election night was the incredible numbers of this landslide. The House, the Senate, completely flipped, decisively flipped, by the way, decisively. We're not talking like tiny little margins. Trump now has a green light to do pretty much whatever he wants for the next 4 years. Now, if you want to be concerned about that, that is absolutely fine. I get it. All right, I get it. And every politician needs to be held accountable, closely accountable for what it is that they do and say. No doubt about it. But what people are going to have to understand is that whether Trump was voted into office by people who just couldn't stand Kamala Harris and didn't like the Democrats, or because they actually supported him, the only thing that matters, the only thing is that he won. That's it. The election was clean. There is absolutely no indication of cheating, rigging, nothing. So, yeah, the margin, yeah, I mean, I have to say, I was shocked by the margin too. I was too. So, now he's going to be sworn in January. And we're all going to have to deal with it. Even these crazies on the left who are shrieking and yelling and moaning and so on. I, for one, am relieved that this fucking campaign is over. Although I have to say that as a lifelong political nerd, this is one of the most extraordinary election nights I have ever experienced in my life. I'm shocked by the margin because I didn't think it would be that big. I didn't. Again, landslide, sure. Margin like that, wow. And not only that, but he lost the popular vote, or he won the popular vote and he won the electoral vote. Unlike 2016 when Hillary won the popular vote and he won the electoral vote. And that's why I also call bullshit on the people who are saying, oh, well, nobody wants a female president. Well, Hillary could have been president if she had won the electoral vote. She got 3 million more votes than he did. So clearly, it's not a question of a woman. It's a question of which woman. And she was the wrong person. I would have preferred, and not just for the excitement value, I would have preferred if the Democrats had had an open convention and they had been able to nominate the person that the party wanted and not just put her in there, installed her as the party nominee. I would have liked an open convention. I would have liked to have seen whether Governor Whitmer of Michigan had a chance, whether some of these other governors would have been able to have a chance. Take a look at the other candidates and say, well, maybe this one's better. Maybe that one is more in tune with the way the country is going, you know? But that's not what happened. It was a mess. It was a shame that Joe Biden hung on for as long as he did. It was a real shame. It was a shame for the party. It was a shame for the country. And it was a shame for him personally, because we could all see that he had been declining for months and months and months and months. And it was an absolute injustice to keep him in as long as he stayed in. He was not fit to lead. He was certainly not fit to serve another term. I think that if he had remained the party's nominee, it would have been like a 50-state landslide. Well, maybe not California, but you know what I'm saying. Oh, and all the people who are saying they're leaving the country, no, you're not. We hear that in every goddamn cycle. Oh, if so-and-so wins, I'm leaving. You know who left the country? Steven Seagal left the country. He moved to Russia, where he's gained like 100 pounds. Nobody cares, all right? All these people were like, I'm moving to Canada. No, you're not. You're not going anywhere. Stop it. So, I think that the shame of this is that I look at my former profession and it makes me very, very sad. It makes me sad that what I'm seeing, these news reports, are what passes for journalism these days. It makes me sad that wishful thinking has replaced facts, evidence. It makes me sad that there seems to be no vetting of information. There seems to be no vetting of pollsters and the numbers that they're coming out with. There's none of that anymore. The discipline that used to exist in the profession of journalism does not exist anymore. It doesn't exist. Which is why I don't watch cable news. I don't. I kept up with the election results on Twitter, and I saw people saying, Harris is going to win in this state because 2% of the vote is in. 2%? What are you talking about? It's too early. You don't know anything. You don't know anything about exit polls. You don't know anything about which county we're talking about, whether it was an urban setting, a rural setting. We don't know any of that stuff. You guys are all jumping the gun. And again, it's wishful thinking. Now, if it's stupidity on Twitter, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But when it's stupidity on the networks, when it's stupidity on cable, that matters a great, great deal. And I remember being at ABC and monitoring the exit polls in '96, and that we were given strict instructions not to release any results to anyone. That means if somebody from Newsweek calls, if somebody from Time calls, if they're like, oh, I'll take you out to dinner, whatever, could you just give me the numbers? No, absolutely not. Because when you start releasing those numbers too early, it could impact the vote in other states. It is incredibly unethical to release those numbers that early. And the fact that the stations have now decided to start releasing those results so early is awful. Even if the wire services release the numbers, the on-air personalities were given strict instructions not to repeat them until our team at ABC could vet the numbers, crunch them, etc. So I am absolutely shocked. I am shocked by how much the profession of political journalism has devolved into a dog and pony show. Where everybody's trying to beat everybody to go first or in the ratings or whatever. It is absolutely awful. It's awful. And the country has suffered, and the MSM has taken a huge hit as a result of these unethical practices. It's a real shame. But like I was saying, some people are going to have to grow up and realize that slinging insults and accusations at people based on the color of their skin, their gender, and so on, and always assuming bad intent is not going to work going forward. It's not going to work because the country spoke up and they spoke out loudly and said enough. Enough. Enough of the gaslighting, enough of the cancel culture, enough of all of it. And now we've got 4 years to work this out. And I have a sneaking suspicion that the Democrats have learned absolutely nothing. And the Democrats are going to be a party in the wilderness for years unless they pull themselves together, get their acts together, and start relating to normal people. They lost the working class years ago. Years ago, just like the Labour Party in the UK lost the working class years ago. And the Labour Party in the UK has made absolutely no effort whatsoever, none, to try and figure out why that happened. And they don't care. They just don't give a damn anymore. You know, these left-wing commentators are like, oh, well, this is because of big business and Wall Street and all that. Well, okay, but if your party is based on looking out for the little guy, and you don't look out for the little guy and instead you spit in their face, insult them, call them names, guess what? They're not going to vote for you anymore. Not ever. So, it's a problem. It's a problem. I'm sure that there was a lot of agony and tearing out of the hair and so on after the election took place, and I'm sure that they took away exactly the wrong lesson from all of it, and that no lessons were learned, and there may be like an uprising among the populist or the progressive caucus in Congress, which will be a disaster, an absolute disaster. So that's where we stand right now. When your first instinct after losing an election is to A, fling abuse at people that you were trying to win over, like Latinos, like blacks, like Jews, like other ethnic groups that have always been staunchly, loyally Democratic, and say that you are a traitor, that you betrayed everyone, that you did. No, this is a problem. It is an absolute problem. And again, you can't control what happens on left-wing Twitter. You can't control what happens on Twitch. You can't control any of that. But giving into these instincts is a problem. And for people to start throwing around the possibility of a Democratic version of January 6th, I see the Democratic version in a much smaller form, not attacking the Capitol. We've seen nothing but protests and cheering for terrorists for the past year. And message to the people organizing these protests, do you know that American people don't like it when American flags are burned in public? You know that that's not a way to win people over, right? Or maybe you don't. Well, I just told you. So, I don't know what to tell you, apart from what I just did. Don't assume that Latinos are in favor of illegal immigration. They're not. No immigrant group is in favor of illegal immigration, not a single one. Don't be fooled by these people who work for these, civil rights groups or whatever, who come forward to say, oh yeah, well, the Latino community or the Ethiopian community or the Chinese community, or, we support bringing people in here illegally and handing out goodies. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No way. Nobody is contesting the results of this election. There is no contesting it. Period. So stop all this nonsense about January 6th and about all that stuff. Stop it. It is dangerous rhetoric. It is a bad idea. It is bad. It is always bad to resort to violence when you do not like the outcome of a vote. If we start doing that, then we're no better than Zimbabwe, okay? That's just how it works. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that creates an enormous amount of resentment. Enormous. All right, guys. Well, good talk. I'm glad you guys all showed up. And I am going to take Sidhu out for a little walk, my baby. He's fast asleep on the floor, my sweetheart. All right, you guys. I will see you guys the next time. See you later.